Hi, welcome to a little stretching and strengthening with me. I'm Angel. I'm here to keep myself accountable to myself, do my daily checking in with my body, and as usual, I'm inviting you to join me if you feel like it, to whatever degree you feel like it. Feeling a little singy today. Let's do a little hip sway and just warm things up. I like to swing the arms and swing the hips and just shift the weight side to side, loosen things up, shake things out. I like to remind you it doesn't take any special equipment or any special moves or any special time of day to give yourself a little loving attention, do a little stretching and strengthening. That said, it is helpful to have a special time of day. I use 11:11 as my reminder to do a little body check. 3:33 is another favorite, and that's just because I like repeating numbers because repetition works, and also because those are handy times of the day for me to check in with my body. I encourage you to find anchors, find triggers, find things that can help remind you or trigger you or spur you or encourage you or invite you to love yourself a little bit more, because love is contagious. It's a good time to mention I got some t-shirts. I got a t-shirt shop. Check out the description for links to that if you're interested. All that said and done, let's get into a little stretching and strengthening. I'm going to take a couple breaths and just bring my attention into the bottoms of my feet. I'm working with a dome here and a modified camera frame, so we'll just do the best we can from where we are with what we got, because that's how I like to do things. Rooting myself into the center of the earth, hanging myself from the center of the sky. I'm going to take a nice swan dive down with a relatively flat back, bending from the hips all the way down past the waist and just hanging here. Give a nice sigh, just letting go of the past like it was yesterday. I'm going to pull up from the waist, give myself a nice hug, pulling up in the pelvic floor, back in the abdomen, left elbow over right, tucking the chin, rounding the spine, giving those shoulders a nice squeeze, just giving myself a nice hug today, checking in with those shoulders and spine. And then releasing all that again from the hips, just hanging here, letting gravity do some unwinding. And then I'm going to come up again, this time right elbow over left, giving myself another hug from the waist, pulling back in the waist, up in the pelvic floor, pulling these shoulder blades apart, giving a nice squeeze, a nice loving hug. And then releasing all that again from the hips. Letting all that go, just shaking it out a little bit. And then I'm going to roll up nice and slow, stacking one vertebra on the next. Checking in with the spine. Just seeing how it's doing today. Let's shake all that out. Shake it off to the left and to the right. Let's just do a little free arm hanging and twisting. You'll find if you join me often that I'm just going through some motions. I have some favorite moves, but mostly I just try to kind of listen to my body, explore, and while routines are nice, as I have and will continue to mention, it's also nice to just freestyle it, kind of follow what your body wants to do. So I have I have sun salutations and general routines that I do, like forward folding, and then I just listen to my body and kind of follow what it wants to do, explore. Sometimes I'll hang longer, sometimes I'll move more quickly. I never know how it's going to go till it's going. So all that explanation out of the way, let's step into a broader stance and just do a little hip dipping. I'm bringing a stretch into the inner thigh here by dipping on the left and then dipping on the right. You got both feet pointing forward. You can't quite see that. Although you can play with planting your feet more at an angle and see how that actually changes the stretch quite a bit. For me, that if I point my feet out, that brings the stretch more into the front of the thigh, interestingly. And then let's step out those heels again. Again, you can't see what I'm doing, but I stepped my feet, pointed the toes, and then I brought the heels out. So now my feet are parallel. And again, let's do some dipping. And for me, that brings the stretch a little more to the back of the thigh. Just exploring that a little bit. Let's go out a little bit deeper. This time I'm going to bring the heels out first. So just exploring how that changes the stretch. There's a widening of the stance and a shifting of the feet, and both of those aspects are going to change how that stretch occurs in this hip socket. And I'm just exploring and playing and checking it out. So now my feet are like this. I'm going to bring the toes out one more time to parallel feet, and now I'm in a even wider stance. And again, dipping on the left, dipping on the right. Just enjoying that stretch on both sides, exploring a little range of motion in the hip socket there. Let's go out one more time, this time shifting the toes, so a little deeper, and exploring a little deeper stretch on both sides. Really getting into that hip socket. I'm kind of finding that in this deeper mode, it gets a little harder to tip. There's just less range of motion, so the temptation is to kind of push into each hip, and that feels good too. Again, I encourage you to play, explore, listen to your body, maybe ask, maybe give it some love, some gratitude. I'm going to now walk my feet in back together, so just one step at a time, shifting heels and toes and heels and toes, bringing those feet back under the hip bones, and then I'm going to roll down again, starting at the top and just checking in with the whole spine, nice and slow, just noticing where there's suppleness and where there's stickiness, where it feels comfortable, where it feels uncomfortable, if it does. Again, just noticing, not judging, but just kind of being with my body, being present, being aware, practicing that awareness. Let's bend the knees and swing the arms back, coming into a bit of a counter stretch. I'm going to have to move this way to get out from under that part of the dome, pushing the hips forward, lifting the chest and eyes. And again, modifying a little bit for my surroundings, as one often has to do. I'm going to now step back with the left foot into a moderate lunge. Turn this way just a little bit, since you can't quite see my feet anyway. Trying to keep my feet on a parallel line, pressing into that back heel, pulling this back hip forward and forward hip back, tipping the tailbone under a little bit, looking for a nice long and strong line through the abdomen and the spine, working together really from the core, from the center. Kind of play with feeling that center a little bit and pulling that back hip forward, forward hip back, making sure that that front knee is not crunching past the toes. And again, I'm looking for parallel lines with the feet and a perpendicular line with the hips. Still pulling up in the pelvic floor a little bit, back in the abdomen, and tipping that tailbone under for a nice long, strong line through the core. I'm going to bring arms up overhead and then push onto the diagonal, feeling for a nice energetic line out the heel, through the spine, through the fingertips, still working to pull that back hip forward, forward hip back. And then I'm going to shift that back heel onto the perpendicular line, now opening the hips, so no longer pulling this back hip forward, but swinging it open, swinging this knee toward the back for an open hip sensation, checking out this side plane here. And then I'm going to widen that stance a little bit so that this knee doesn't crunch past those toes, and come into a forward twisting side triangle. I'm using my right arm and leg against each other for torque and support, making sure not to crunch or collapse, and lifting that left hand, gazing up past those fingertips for I call this an aeroplane pose, but I think it's called a twisting side triangle in some classes. I'm going to bring this arm around the back side, reaching for this opposite thigh, and getting a nice twist through the upper body, a little bit through the lower body, gazing out past that long leg and giving all those organs a nice hug. Don't forget to breathe and smile. I'm going to bring this arm around the inside of this leg and then bring this leg back to meet the back foot, pressing through the palms, through the spine, tipping the tailbone toward the back of the head, pressing into those heels, playing with different lengths here. Trying to stay in camera for you, but we may just have to make do with a little out of camera today. Pressing into those heels, tipping the tailbone back, and then I'm going to step forward with that left foot into a nice deep lunge. I do apologize for the lack of ability to see what I'm doing. I'll be working on the camera angle. For now, I'll just make do. So stepping forward now with that back foot into center position again, and then forward folding again from the hips, just hanging here. And roll back up, just checking in with the spine again, kind of giving a little counter stretch here, enjoying a little hanging from the chest sensation. And then I'm going to step back with this right foot for a lunge on the other side. Again, pulling this back hip forward and forward hip back, tipping the tailbone under, pressing into that back heel, making sure that this knee isn't crunching past the toes. Let's see if we can change this up temporarily, make this a little more useful for you. Tipping the tailbone under and long and strong through the spine and the abdomen, working from the core. Again, playing with that sensation of pulling this back hip forward, forward hip back, looking for a perpendicular line through the hips, parallel lines through the feet, pressing into that back heel, checking that the front knee is not crunching past the toes. And then I'm going to bring the arms up overhead, making sure not to crunch up in those shoulders, and just pushing into that diagonal line, kind of eking that back heel out a little bit, feeling for energy through the heel, through the spine, out the fingertips. And then I'm going to shift this back heel onto the perpendicular line, opening the hips, swinging this knee out, checking out the side plane and sliding this back heel out. I'm going to be twisting around to see if I'm in frame, using my left arm and leg against each other for torque and support, and giving a nice twist, coming into a side triangle aeroplane pose, gazing up past those right fingertips, making sure not to crunch or collapse in the shoulder and supporting leg. And then bringing this hand around the back to reach for that opposite thigh. Give it a nice twist through the upper body, gazing out past that long leg. Giving a nice sigh there, a nice hug to all those organs, wringing out. And then I'm going to unwind that, bringing this hand on the inside of that left leg and bringing weight onto the hands, bringing that front leg back to meet the back leg, pushing through the palms, through the spine, tipping the tailbone toward the back of the head, pressing into those heels, relaxing the belly and the back, just enjoying that upside down triangle or tent or downward facing dog position, pressing the heart toward the earth, pressing the palms into the ground, really working to tip that tailbone toward the back of the head. That stretches the backs of the legs. And then swinging that right foot forward into a nice deep lunge. Enjoying that for a breath or two, a little bounce. I like to bounce. Some people don't like to bounce. You bounce if you like to bounce, or don't bounce if you don't like to bounce. It's my take on it. I'm going to step forward with that back foot. Just eke back a little to stay in camera, and then hanging here again from the hips. Shaking out the head. And let's roll up one more time. Just checking in with the spine. Shaking that out. I'm going to come back here to adjust this just a little bit. Nope, a little bit more. Let's do some big, medium, and small circles with the hands, shoulders, and arms. Just another way I like to check in. So starting with some small circles. Just checking in with those finger bones and wrist bones. Just playfully, like, get into the movement. Really just circle those. See where there's, again, where there's stickiness, where there's suppleness. Let's do some shoulder shrugs or circles, medium circles. Breathing in on the way up. And exhaling on the way down. And the other way. Let's do big circles. I'm going to come into a wider stance just to get out of my own way so I don't hit the top of the dome. But you can do it from any position that you're in. I'm going to come into a bit of a horse stance even, just to stop from hitting dome ceiling here, but I'm making big circles. Breathing in on the way up and out on the way down. Again, the other way. Shake all that out. I'm going to scooch this again and see if I can bring you down to the floor with me since we're already halfway there. We'll come into a squat position. One of my favorite underappreciated poses. I think it's underappreciated anyhow. I don't see people doing it that much, but it sure is good for the body. So I'm pressing my heels down. I'm using my elbows on my knees. And I like to press palms to kind of give me a little more torque and even just play around with some stretching, pressing each elbow into each knee. Alternatively, giving a little twist, or you can press both and really pulling the chest and shoulders forward, pushing the knees back, pulling up in the pelvic floor, pushing down in those heels. You can play with different foot orientation like we did earlier to kind of change up that stretch. Again, I like to play with different pushing on each side just because that feels really good through the back. To me, I'm going to come on down to sitting since I'm that close already. And just bring my awareness into the sits bones, root myself into the center of the earth again, hanging myself from the center of the sky. Let's just do some nice deep breathing, breathing in love and exhaling judgment and expectation, aligning myself with lightness, love, lightheartedness, expanding my capacity for stresses and letting go and connecting. It's a beautiful life. I hope you're getting some on ya. I hope you're remembering to breathe and smile. I hope you're taking some time to take care of your body as it takes care of you, moves you through this life. I welcome your questions and comments. I thank you in advance for your thumbs up and your clicking the subscribe button, or you're checking out the description, checking out my t-shirts, my books, my music, my services. Thank you. Happy day. Peace.